Hello and welcome to my JetBrains Project Writer unboxing video. And the goal of this video is for me to get some first impressions of Project Writer and to encourage you to sign up for the Project Writer previews as well and check it out for yourself. Now I want to give you a brief warning here. I'm recording this on March 26, 2016. I'm using the Writer 144.4757 Early Access Preview. Now, this is not a completed product yet. We're on the cutting edge, so it could be buggy. Some features are not done. I'm going into this video almost completely fresh. I've used ReSharper for years, but I've not even installed Project Writer until just now. I've briefly glanced at some of the material they've put out, the EAP Survival Guide, and I've also skimmed through some of the video tutorials that they've made available. If you're watching this on YouTube, there are some links to those pages below, so you can check them out for more information. But I've only just skimmed those briefly. So this video is going to be me experiencing this for the first time. That's why I'm calling it an unboxing video, even though there's no actual box for me to open and show you. Alright, so here it is. This is the exe file that I downloaded. This is the Windows version of Project Writer. I may try a Linux version sometime in the future, but we'll just stick with Windows for now. So I'm going to go ahead and start the install. Let's see what happens. Okay, so I've got a Writer setup wizard. Pretty standard wizard here. I'll put it in project or program files. That's fine. Space required 646 meg, so decent size for an IDE. Still a lot smaller than Visual Studio. We'll see how that goes. Desktop shortcuts. I think I will do that. I'm not going to associate with SLNs because I don't expect to be using this on a daily basis. So I'll keep Visual Studio associated with SLNs for now. And I'll put it in a start folder, that's fine. And now we're starting to extract and install the files. I may edit this part if it takes too long. Okay, so that didn't take too long. Maybe a minute on my machine here. I don't have a particularly fast or performant machine. It's a few years old, but it's my normal development machine. I'll go ahead and check Run Writer because I'm going to do it right away. I'm not going to put it off. Alright, so this is a screen here asking me if I want to import settings from a previous version of Writer. Now, like I said, I've not installed Writer before, so I don't have any settings to import. So I'll just keep on the second option here. Alright, I get a customized Writer screen. So UI theme, I can choose IntelliJ, which is JetBrains' flagship product. IntelliJ, that's their IDE they use for Java, and it's the basis for a lot of the other products. Or I can use what they call Darkula, which is funny. Now, in my day-to-day development, I tend to stick to the dark themes. I think they're easier on my eyes. I'll switch to light themes if I'm presenting on certain types of projectors, but normally I'll just stick to Darkula for my normal work. I think I'll use Darkula for this video because that's just what I would normally use. So I can skip all of these setups and use defaults, but I'm going to go ahead and go to the key maps next. Now this is the area where probably your opinion may vary from a lot of other developers and from mine. There's 3 different key map schemes you can set up for shortcuts. So this depends on what you're used to, because this is the same sort of choice you have to make when you're installing ReSharper as well. So just looking at these options, Visual Studio, I think that's the one I tend to use. There's also the ReSharper key map, and then there's also the IDEA key map. I think I'm going to go with Visual Studio because Control R is what I'm used to for rename, F12 for declaration, and so on. Okay. This is just a notice about the early access program. So I think I mentioned this already, but here's the build number I'm using. If you're using a later or earlier version, it might look different for you. There's an issue tracker, so if we find any bugs, or if I find any bugs along the way, I'm going to try to submit them to the issue tracker, or see if they're already there. And there are some known issues and limitations that we could also review before submitting. I think there's some that they list in those links that I mentioned earlier. Just go down under the video, click those links. There are some known issues, some features they haven't completed yet. All right, start using Writer. Now you can't see it because I'm recording a different screen, but there's a little splash screen showing up here. Let's take a screenshot of that to show you. Alright, so here is the Welcome to Writer screen. I can do a new project, I can open an existing project, I can check out from version control. And so I can choose a, well, GitHub and Git is two different options here, that's interesting. But I'm going to go ahead and let's see what else we got here. Configure. So I think we already went through those. I'll just go ahead and do a new project. Do a file new. Alright. We've got 5 different C# projects we can choose from. Class library, console app, empty project, DNX class library, or DNX console app. So I'm not sure what DNX means. I'm going to look that up. What is a DNX? And it was called class library. Let's see what that means. New DNX. .NET execution. So is that something to do with the new .NET Core? If so, I believe that is some of the functionality they've not yet finished in Project Writer, so I'm going to try to avoid that for now. I'm just going to do a plain console application. And I'll call it Project Writer Unboxing. And I've created a folder that I'm going to put this in. Project Writer Unboxing for now. Finish that. And so here we are. Here's Project Writer. And looks like it's doing some work here. But there we go. We've got a Solution Explorer. Looks very similar to Visual Studio so far. So we've got this resharper icon up here. That's interesting. There's a solution, there's the project in the solution. Some references, those look like the standard references you'd see when you do a file new. We have a properties with assembly info. We can open that up, it's probably nothing crazy. The same sorts of thing we'd expect to see. And we can bring up the console program with its main class, and that looks about the same as Visual Studio. Let's try collapsing this. Now, where did my Solution Explorer go? Did that just close it? Let's see. I want to bring up that Solution Explorer again. I usually have it on the right side of the screen. Oh, here we go. View Tool Window, Solution Explorer. So this, if I hover over it, it's hiding it. It's kind of what I expected, but I didn't see how to unhide it. It's just down here. Okay. Scroll, collapse, pinned mode. Okay, can I drag this over to the other side? It's typically where I put it. Not going to spend too much time on this. If I take this off of pinned mode, I can move it. No, no, no. Floating mode. Okay. Well, I can't really dock it over here. Okay, well, I can't figure that out. Maybe that's something I can ask about, moving windows over to the right side where I'm used to seeing them. But I'll leave it open for now, since that might be useful for you following along. Okay, let's do a hello world, console.writeLine, hello world. So I just did a Control S That's my muscle memory has me do that when I'm working in Visual Studio. Changes have been made in memory and on disk. So show the difference. And okay, save memory content. That's fine. So I'm using the wrong key. Control S is save all. It's interesting. I'll try another. Control D duplicates, so I would expect that. Hello World 2, Control S. That time it didn't prompt me. So maybe it was just the first time you hit save all, Control S. It prompts you for what to do. Alright, interesting. Alright, now let's try just a simple build. Let's see what happens. So we've got some activity at the bottom of the screen there. Build completed successfully. Is there any output of that? Let's see, we've got this build output. Looks pretty standard there, no errors. Okay. We've got a terminal window. Oh, this is interesting. I actually have a standard Windows command terminal here at the bottom. I can see the files that's been created. So there's an .idea folder. That's something I've seen before using PHP Storm. So that's part of the solution information, part of the project information. There's a solution file, a solution.iml file. I'm not familiar with that. And there's the project writer unboxing folder. If I go in there, we see the program, the bin and obj folders. That makes sense. Go to debug. And there's my exe. So I can run it from here. And there we go. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't think I can do that with Visual Studio. Maybe with PowerShell, but there's no terminal built into like this. At least not that I know of. So correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's a pretty cool feature. I like that. I like having a terminal right there as part of the IDE. Okay, so that's cool. All right, let's look at some of these build options up here. So by default, we're using MS Build 14. I can select other versions if I want to. There are other runtimes I can select. So I believe that if you're on Linux, and maybe even Mac, then instead of Microsoft.NET, you'll get the mono option here by default, since .NET is not available on Linux or Mac, at least not until the .NET Core version is released. I can select debug or release. Here's my CPU options. All I have is any CPU. And this must be configuration, so there's a default configuration. I can create other ones. What are these buttons here? This is a run, so this is probably, let's run this real fast here and see what happens. So some configuration options here. Let's click run and see what happens here. So it's kind of doing the same thing. It's running it in a terminal window. It's not the same terminal window I was in earlier, but there's another terminal window here. And I guess it just writes the console output to this window and then terminates. Alright, and there's a debug option. So let's try setting so there's a breakpoint here on the namespace. Did I click that by accident? I might have. Let's set a breakpoint here. We'll click the debug option and see how the debugging works. So a console window popped up over here. Just FYI, and I guess I hit the breakpoint. It's not entirely clear to me. Usually in Visual Studio it highlights it in yellow or something. Maybe this blue highlight is what it's doing. And let's see, what are these options here? That's step over. That's show execution point. That's step into probably. It's for step into, step out, or into cursor. So let's do a step over. Okay, and I would expect hello world written to console. Very good. And then I'll just is there a continue? Probably right here. Resume program. Yep. Okay. And my console went away because the program terminated. So debugging seems to work nicely. That's good. Alright, one other thing I wanted to try is one of my favorite features of ReSharper is the unit test runner. So let's try unit tests. Now, in order to create tests, we're going to need to add in a testing framework. So let's see if we can't get NuGet to work here. Usually there's a right click here in Visual Studio. I see the NuGet icon down here. What does that do? Repositories, packages. Okay, so here's a little NuGet window. I assume I can get a command line for it as well. I'm not sure what that would be. Is it one of these options here? Okay, well, let's just do NUnit. That's always a popular one. And I double click that. And apply for selected project. So I'll select this project here and apply it. And you saw briefly some output there. This is the log. Looks like it added it correctly to the packages folder. So if I go back to the console here, I'll go back up. Let me hide this one here. So now in the project folder, there's a packages config, which I assume has NUnit in it. If I go back to the solution level, there's a packages folder and NUnit. So this is all very much just like Visual Studio, so that's very good and expected. Alright, so let's create a test fixture. Alright, notice that it found the namespace for me, put it in there. I didn't have to do the Alt-Enter or anything like that, so that's you know, maybe one less keystroke than normal ReSharper. So I'll create a test, public void, unit test demo. Create a function here, and I'll just assert that 1 is equal to 1. So that test should pass. I'll do Control D, and I'll name this one Demo 1, this one Demo 2. This one I want to fail, so we'll assert that 1 equals 2. Control S. Alright, now I'm not seeing the normal ReSharper dots to indicate that I can run these tests here. Normally I expect them to appear little green icons here. So let's see if there's another way we can actually run these tests. Alright, so sometimes there's a Unit Test Explorer window. I'm not seeing anything like that here. Navigate. Code. Refactor. Build, run. Tools. Version control. Window. Okay, I'm not seeing anything for that. Can I right click on this perhaps and run the test? Is there a plugin maybe? Let's see. View. Looking for maybe like an options for plugins. Well, this is a little confusing. This is one of my favorite things from ReSharper, and I'm not seeing any way to run tests. So perhaps I'm doing something wrong. Maybe if I just do a build, maybe then they'll show up. Nope, still nothing there. Okay, well, let's go back over to this reference guide and see if there's anything here about running tests. Maybe it's not part of the preview yet. Open existing project. We did all that. We used NuGet. They're showing Newtonsoft. Okay, so there's the runtimes I was talking about. You can get mono with Linux or Mac, I assume. Running and debugging, we did that. There's some options. How do we get to options? Work in progress. The following items are being worked on as a part of the EAP. So unit test runner is in there. Doesn't really have any more comment on whether it exists or not. So, yeah, I'm not seeing any unit testing, so that might not be a part of this preview yet. That's unfortunate. So I'd have to run NUnit tests with a standard NUnit runner outside of Project Writer. Although I could probably just run that here in the console window. That wouldn't be the end of the world, but certainly more convenient to have them as part of the IDE. So, okay, now let's go ahead and save all. The last thing I want to do is I'm going to exit Project Writer, and now I'm going to open that very project that I just created in Writer with Visual Studio. Just want to verify that it's going to work. So where is my Project Writer unboxing? Where did it go? Wasn't it on, did I put it on C? Yeah, I put it on C. Okay. And open the SLN file. Alright, so it seems to be loading it just fine, recognizing it. So there's nothing crazy about the CSproj files or solution files that is proprietary. If I go into the unit tests, since I've got ReSharper, well, so here's something interesting, that it's the line endings are showing up as not consistent, which generally means this is files been edited in something other than Visual Studio. So I'm not going to normalize them just yet. One other thing that I should point out here is by default it looks like Project Writer is using spaces instead of tabs. I don't know if you can configure that or not yet. But here's those dots I was talking about. I was expecting to see. Since I have ReSharper installed in Visual Studio, we can see that one passes and one fails. And if I go ahead and run this program, I go ahead and run this program, you can see that it's also working as expected. So that's good. So my initial impressions of Project Writer are that it is a very good start. There are a couple things missing that would keep me from using it right now. The unit test not being as part of the IDE would be one of them. I'd probably stick with Visual Studio at the very least until they had that feature. I had some trouble moving around the Solution Explorer window, docking it to the place I wanted it to go. So that may be something that's also being worked on, or maybe I just didn't quite understand it. But otherwise, it looks just about what I expected to. It wasn't many surprises. Everything was where I was looking for it. NuGet seemed to work well, so I'm very pleased. I'd recommend you sign up for the Project Writer Early Access Preview program if you haven't already, and give it a try yourself. And if you have any questions, you'd like me to try it, or something else you want me to look at in Project Writer, leave a comment or send me an email, or contact me on Twitter. I'll give you some information in the YouTube description below. So thank you very much for joining me.